On this industry relations, Rob and I discuss strat plans, fear, keeping it real, and do any of us have the right to exist? Let's go. This is Industry Relations, a podcast that's at the intersection of real estate and technology from an insider's perspective, with Rob Hahn and Greg Robertson. Hi, everybody. This is Greg, and I wanted to give a quick shout out to our newest sponsor, CoreLogic. There has never been a time when it's been more crucial for real estate agents to demonstrate their value to their clients, and CoreLogic has all the tools for them to do so. One Home has generated over 17 million unique users who are exploring listing and neighborhood data. Their invitation-only client portal has also amassed 2.3 billion listing views, and their new photo AI search helps turn clients' visual aspirations into reality. For agents on the go, there's MLS Touch, which is their top-rated real estate app in the App Store, which gives agents instant access to critical MLS data wherever they are, and also can be branded for collaboration as a client version. Next up is RealList. RealList gives agents expert level analysis of properties, which helps their clients make smarter decisions and also can help them with their lead generation efforts. All this is underpinned by Matrix, the industry's leading MLS system. Currently, CoreLogic is rolling out Matrix 12, which will have a brand new interface that works perfect for mobile and desktop. Lots of great stuff happening at CoreLogic. Don't forget an update from your favorite rep, whether that's Rick, Todd, Kim, Lauren, or the rest of the crew, or visit their website. You can look at the link in the show notes. My thanks again for CoreLogic for sponsoring Industry Relations.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Industry Relations with Rob and Greg. This is your co-host, the notorious Rob, of course. And then as always, the fabulous Greg Robertson.
Hello, Rob.
Hola. How are you, bud?
Dude, I'm doing okay. Just chilling like a villain over here. I'm getting prepared for, I've got a couple strat plan things I'm doing for some MLSs, and you love that, don't you?
All right, so obviously, that was like a mainstay of my consulting work as well.
Right,
so
right.
I understand. What's going to be your approach to strat plans? Let's talk about this.
Yeah,
Because I have
okay.
a very different, unique one to everybody else. I'm just curious what yours is going to be.
Right. So I think the way that I approach this is that, and by all means, I didn't mean this to be a Giant Steps commercial, but if this is going to float your boat, give me a call. Call me or
Why
Stacy, and
not?
we'll be love to talk.
Why not?
So, so I look at it as like if they really want some sort of like really strategic planning, it's not something that I can, me and Stacy and I can kind of parachute in and like, okay, over the, here there's 3 days, let's figure this out, right? If you really want that type of service, you got to be engaged with, I think, whatever consulting company, whatever advisor you're doing, whoever it is, for a long period of time, a year or something. That would be that kind of commitment.
Okay.
I'm not right now in that kind of business, right? So
Yeah.
what I feel our role is that we come in there and we get everybody thinking, right? We educate them. In the way that I like to educate things, I like to also entertain them. So to me,
Sure.
I need to tell a story, right? So I spend a
Sure.
lot of time thinking about how I tell the story of what's going on in real estate that, a lot of people just that are not fully in it like you and I can kind of get. So, this industry update thing that I start off with to me is a very long, and it's a thing I think a lot about, and I try to make it fun and entertaining and also them
And you
learn
too.
something.
Yep.
And then it's about fostering some sort of like communication, because a lot of people in a board setting like this, and I've been in a ton of them, some of them are shy, some of them are not so shy. How do I be in there and get as much out of that room and get them engaged as much as possible? Because a lot of times MLS execs tell me, well, they don't like to learn, nobody really is communicating back and forth. One of my superpowers is I can sit at a table and I can get people discussing things.
Sure.
So I think that's a lot. So if the MLS exec is got an agenda and they want to, they know what they want to do, I can be a facilitator of them for them. I can be the sword in their hand to execute what they want to do when they can't themselves. Because a lot of times, well, they've heard from that guy or that, that exec all the time. It almost takes a third party to come in there to really sometimes bring back the same ideas or bring back them in a new way that they kind of understand it. So that's kind of what I look at my role of doing.
I'm having flashbacks. PTSD. All right. You know what? I think we should do an episode after you've. This is your first one that you're doing. Have you done a couple of these already?
So I've only done one where I've just given a presentation. This is going to be one where I've give the presentations. I have a couple, and then we go into.
Okay.
So yeah, no, this will be kind of
I can't wait to talk to you after, because yeah.
I'm excited about it. I mean, it's what I've been, the amount of work I'm putting in, because this being the kind of first one into this, I know it's going to pay off if we are lucky enough to
it's
continue with
tremendous
others.
amount of work.
But it's fascinating trying to kind of put this in perspective. And I'll give a little clue here, but I am using the kind of like murder board, who killed compensation, right? And I've got the suspects and the victims and that, and I think the way that the narrative of what I'm taking really will help anybody, even a layman, and that's what I'm going for, to understand what's going on in the real estate world, and then how we apply that to what we need to do or what they need to do as an organization to kind of stand out and survive. Because there's a lot of problems, but there's a lot of opportunity here too. So
yeah. All right. Well, I have a feeling that's going to get us into kind of what we decided we have to talk about, because, my Lord, we've talked about clear cooperation policy a whole lot.
Yeah.
And yet that's what everyone's talking about. So it feels like we kind of have to talk about it. But I want to do something a little different based on kind of how we led into this.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, good.
Which is, you're about to go into strat planning. Clearly, this is going to be a major topic, right?
Yes.
That they're going to talk about, right? But I'm going to put a spin on it. Okay, ready for the spin?
Oh God, this is not the good thing about never rehearsing this shit or discussing it ahead of time. But go ahead.
Hey man, that's where the authenticity comes from, right? I mean, this is why people love us, because we just kind of say shit, and sometimes it's just coming out the the top of our heads. All right. And I say this because I remember reading like a post somewhere. It was either a comment on one of my posts, or it might have been on Facebook or LinkedIn or one of those things, where some realtor basically was like, the only thing the NAR has left now is the MLS. Right? Something like that. And he mentioned in the context of like of CCP. Like, why is NAR so engaged? Because the only thing that NAR has now is the MLS. Okay, maybe. But I do look at it as...
That makes no sense, but yeah, go ahead.
Well, I mean... Well, I don't know. I think it kind of makes sense, right? Because that's one of the things we talk about.
What is NAR known for in let's just say Washington, D.C.?
Lobbying. Yeah.
Okay, so already I've just named one thing.
Oh, yeah. But how many people are going to sign up for NAR membership to do lobbying?
Okay, but
out of 1.3 million realtors.
That's a different question.
Well, I think that's what he meant, right? Like the value of like, why am I a realtor kind of deal, right? So one of the things that occurs to me is, after the settlement, after the lawsuits, after everything, and after NAR frankly got their ass kicked, the power dynamic between NAR and the MLS has changed, right? So I know the MLSs want to go start talking about clear cooperation policy, but that's an NAR rule, right? So maybe the threshold question strategically is, why should you, the MLS, give a shit what NAR's rules are? Maybe the answer is, don't be a realtor MLS. So the strategic question to be presented is, hey, local MLS, why are you a realtor MLS?
Right. I think, I'll come back at you with another quote. Okay.
Sure.
This is straight out of my presentation. So,
all right.
We'll do this. And
I love it. And live, strat plan.
So this is from Terry McDermott, former CEO of NAR, right?
Sure.
And the quote is this: they have to make sure their members fully understand. And I'm reading this, right from the quote.
Yeah. This is
They
what he said. Yeah.
yeah, they have to make sure their members fully understand the MLS system and how it operates. That it's just not a collection of electronic listings. If we keep cheapening the MLS system and commoditizing the MLS by saying it's just an aggregation of listings, we're going to inherit a very negative end result.
True.
Right. So I think, this is, I don't know the exact date of this quote, but by it being from Terry McDermott, right, which is like he was, I think in the 90s, right? So pre-internet kind of ways.
He was before Dale. So that would be early 90s, maybe
Yeah.
in the 80s. Yeah.
No,
Okay.
no, no. It would be, yeah. I think
Well, so
he did tail into the 2000s, I
did
think.
he? Okay. So the thing is, though, I remember reading that quote. I think there's a second half of that quote. Like that quote was in the context of an overall pitch, overall presentation, overall speech that he was making. I think I
Mhm.
could be totally wrong, right? So as you're researching, I believe what he was pointing out was that the MLS is not just a collection of listings, right?
Yeah.
Of bits of
No, that's
data,
exactly what he's saying.
right? What he's saying is the MLS is about compensation. I believe that's the context. That what the MLS actually does is cooperative compensation and guarantee of payment. I believe that's the
Well,
context.
there's two things there. There's cooperation and compensation, right? So,
Sure,
those things I think could be separated out.
without compensation, cooperation becomes iffy, which is the CCP context. So we're going to get into that. My thing is, to me, the first strat plan question I would be posing to any MLS is, why are you a realtor MLS?
Right.
It used to be NAR be like, we provide this insurance coverage. Well, NAR's insurance coverage has kind of run out.
Right.
And I don't actually even know. Do you know whether their insurance carrier renewed with NAR?
I, I would doubt it.
I don't know. I mean, we haven't clearly they're not going to renew the antitrust coverage, but did they renew like the E&O coverage? I don't know. So in any event, my point is, like, what is it now? Right? What is it
Right.
now? Now that NAR's got its ass kicked, everyone sees it. You can pretend otherwise, and like brokers and agents, like, I don't belong to NAR. Your top
Well, I think
whatever,
wasn't it Alabama that just came out and said, that
we
is
want
asking
out.
that
Yeah,
question, right? Yeah.
yeah. So, but that's at the association level. I'm saying as an MLS, like, fine, you're realtor-owned MLS, so all your shareholders are realtors. Maybe you're a single association. Maybe you're whatever, right? I don't even know, right? Some some county associate realtors MLS, right? Okay, but why are you a realtor MLS?
Right.
I
No.
would be fascinated to hear what those people have to say.
Yeah.
Because they're all board members. They all came out of the association. Do you know what I mean? They were all probably appointed by the association. They're on the MLS committee, whatever it is. Okay, cool. Like, then answer it. Like, why should you be a realtor MLS? Why should your MLS have anything to do with NAR?
Yeah. I think that
So
those questions you could answer them any way you want, but the
yeah, yeah,
reality of breaking that apart is so arduous, difficult, and Byzantine that
sure,
you
maybe.
you could ask those questions all the time, but it's just like, okay, so you decide whatever way you decide, it's going to be tough to unravel if you decide let's not be that.
Well, here's the thing, though. But there's some real consequences, right? So, for example, let's say your local MLS and all the brokers in your local market, right? Say we don't like CCP. We don't want to have anything to do with it. If you're a realtor MLS, you don't have a choice. That's a mandatory policy, right? Why are you a realtor
Well,
MLS?
the MLS, even if it's not a realtor MLS, they could have a rule that says that as well, right? It doesn't mean that
They
it goes
could,
away. Yeah.
they could, but then they would make their own mind. They would make up their own mind, right? Like
Right.
Northwest MLS can decide. I think they have a variation that's very similar to CCP. Maybe it's even a little stronger. I think. I think I don't think they have like an office exclusive, for example. I think.
Yeah, there's I
Right.
think that Refkin actually called them out for the way that they do it or something like that.
I don't remember how, but
Yeah.
maybe they allow it, maybe they don't. My point is, like, Northwest MLS can make its own decision, right? MLS Pin can make its own decision. FMLS can make its own decision. Like whoever the board, the brokers in that area, whoever they are, they get together and they say, "Hey, we
Yeah,
love CCP. We hate CCP. You can make your own decision," right? Whereas if you're a realtor MLS, you can't make your own decision.
right.
So that's threshold question, right? I think it'd be fascinating to just kind of
Yeah, I
find out.
mean, there is a bit of the emperor has no clothes. I fully understand what you're saying,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Of NAR positing that there's all these benefits, and then over time we've seen that these things are
yeah.
either don't exist anymore, or we're not as strong as you thought they were, right? So that's why I think that's why we keep on discussing this stuff, right? It's all either a challenge or opportunity, depending on how you look at it.
Sure. And again, like we'll talk about this for in future date when you've done a bunch of these strat plans. Like, I mean, my first experience was like we're not doing strategy, right? Like to me, strategic question would be that one. Why are we a realtor MLS? Nobody even wants to touch anything strategic. They just want to do basically a list of to dos for the executive. Like we want a better color scheme on the front end of the MLS. We want better training on commission handling, some shit like that, right? It's like that's not strategy. Like
No, a lot
that's
of this is tactical stuff, and I mean,
yeah, yeah,
and to
yeah,
be fair, I'm not even sure whether they're calling this a. I think strat plan is something of a term I think in the industry we use, but a lot of times that might be that I'm only using that as a generic term. I don't know if they
sure,
actually
sure,
call that board meeting a strat plan or not, or if it's
sure,
a
sure,
vision
yeah,
plan or whatever the hell. So
sure,
yeah.
sure. I just but if you're gonna call it strat plan, like deal with strategic questions, like
Well,
hey, should we be a real term?
yeah, I think
And then
I
the
think
second part will be what should we do about clear cooperation policy, right?
right.
Because that's the rage. That's the so I don't know. So let's get into it, man. Like, what's the latest?
Well,
What's
I
the
think
latest?
the latest to me, I would say is that an MLS exec, Brian Denali of
Denellen. Yep.
has
Is it
said.
Denellen or Donnellan? I mean, 10 years later, I still don't
I
know.
think I've
I've
heard it
always called
both
it
ways,
Denellen.
so I just
Yeah.
I think I myself go back and forth. So sorry, Brian.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry,
Um,
Brian.
but I
Can
think
we change your last name so that, can we all agree it's Denellen?
it's Denellen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, he put out a op-ed piece on Inman News.
Yep.
Basically, Reffkin has been around talking a lot of
Yep.
uh, had a lot of talking points, and I saw him at CMLS, and he said a lot of I would say inaccuracies. Amy Gorsh actually came up there in a
Hmm.
later panel and kind of um, refuted a lot of the things that he had said on stage before. I mean, about data usage and things. And
Hmm.
Denellen has done the same thing on Inman, but to a little deeper depth of some of the things that what Reffkin has been saying, which are just categorically false, right? And I just wrote about something about this morning about it, and as we've talked about here before, and he does. If you haven't read the article, we'll put it in the show notes.
Sure.
There's a line by line. He goes, he said this, and that's not true. He says this, that's not true. I mean, he goes through there. Now he says it in a manner that is respectful, probably not as respectful as my post was, but it was a good a good overview, a good kind of take on what's Reffkin's been saying out there, and my take on it is that it goes back to Brian Barrero's kind of post about about clear cooperation
Yeah.
and
Being
clearing it up,
honest
and
about it.
that
Yeah. No
these are
BS.
all bullshit things that he brings up, right? And really, let's just get down to it. It's about your stock price. It's about your margin, right? That's what you're this is all a facade for, right? Well, when he says that, oh, my brokers took a vote and they overwhelmingly want to do this. Well, it's like my mother said, if all your friends wanted to drive off a cliff, would you drive off a cliff? I mean, that's not leadership, right?
Hmm.
That's not thinking, right? So he goes in this pretty well. And then it just got back to me that, and when I first saw him at CMLS, I put up a post with the picture of him, and I put a fake quote on there, and it's basically saying they're eating the cats, they're eating the dogs,
Sure.
they're eating the pets of the people who live here. Because to me, what has happened culturally is that the only way we can get our message across now is stoking fear. And it's a lot of misinformation, right? So whether it's the death of democracy or immigrants are eating cats and dogs, it's like these are the things that like we now are just normal to communicate with. And it's a shame. Why don't we get to the fact of like, okay, you're having trouble with your business. Okay. Because the market one day, I tell you, it is going to turn, right? So your exclusive listings are going to be a not a good thing. They're going to be a bad thing, right? So you should focus on what's wrong with your business, which right now is you're not apparently providing enough value, to your customers to sustain a good business instead of throwing up all this word salad and this fear out there to do it, right? And I don't know if that's ever going to change. I think it's just part of our culture now, unfortunately. But I just think that there's especially a man is like his incredible backstory, Reffkins and where he came from and what
Sure.
his accomplishments. And I'm not even talking about the fair housing shit, right? I mean, this is that's just an underling of some of the stuff, right? So yeah, I mean, and that's kind of where I think to me the discussion is now about is like, are the things being put out. And again, I know it's not just Reffkin himself, but he seems to be the personification of it or the biggest arduent kind of person going out there and talking about these things.
Okay. So I don't. I guess I'm not understanding. So what do you think Brian Donnellan's post did in terms of moving the needle?
Well, I think there's a lot of people, maybe your average realtor on the street or people that attend conferences was just taking what Reffkin was saying as gospel. Like, oh, wow, they're selling our data to, Bright MLS is a VC company and
Hmm.
they're doing, I mean, there's just some of those things that are just categorically false, right? So I think in that case, at least somebody's trying to set the record straight on those things and kind of pushing back there because on specific things that he said, not on an overall kind of discussion of CCP itself.
Like I said, at this point, it's been so long. I don't know that they're categorically false. We what we have is,
Have you
he
read the
said.
article?
I did. He said and she said, and it's been a while. But look, back when I like my first entree into MLS space was at Bright, right? When it was called MRIS under David Sharon, right? I was the interim CMO there. But I remember at the time we were looking to start a data company, like Bright MLS data company that would sell to investors and governments and blah blah blah. So maybe they shuttered that since, but for a while, like that was an initiative. So it's not like I don't know if it's wrong. Like so I don't know that's categorically false. The whole like Bright is a VC. Now, yeah, Bright's not a VC, but I sort of distinctly remember David Sharon after he retired had a position for like a year or two as something like Bright Investors or something like that. So maybe it's not Bright MLS, maybe it's some other thing, right? But I don't know. But what I mean is like until this isn't a trial, right?
Right.
There's not been a you know legal case where both sides present evidence and then a jury or a judge says, okay, like I buy that,
No,
that's true,
anybody
and this is not.
again, I encourage
It's just
if you haven't
media, right?
if you haven't read the article, go read the article and you can
Yeah,
make
go read the article. Yeah,
your own
I mean,
decisions about whether or not,
yeah,
what he's saying is valid. I read it and I thought they were
yeah.
valid.
What I'm getting at is I don't know that what Brian wrote moved the needle in any way. Just like I don't think what Refkin kind of is out there like
Okay,
talking, I don't know
so
if that moves the needle,
okay, well,
right?
let's say move the needle, right? Has there been any really prominent MLS executive that has gone out and said, that has disputed or whatever? Typically they're a shy bunch, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah. So I think whether somebody who's in charge of one of the largest MLSs in the country,
yeah,
it could be number one or number two, depending on how you measure it, is
yeah.
coming out and like being,
No,
aggressive. I mean, does that move the needle? I
cool.
mean, it was only written 2 days ago. We'll see.
No, what here's what I mean. Like his response was just like a counter, just to your point, like dealing with lies, misinformation from company. It was very specific, like answering that. I'm like, look, if you want to move the needle, Brian, as CEO of the second largest MLS in the country, right? What's your opinion on clear cooperation, right?
Right.
And specific, so let's move the focus a little bit because everything has become like
I think Bright has
attacking
been one
Refkin
of
and
the
Compass.
MLSs that have been very specific on the, they have websites about this, about, fair
Yeah,
housing and things like
sure,
that.
kind of. But
I
what
can
I'm
put
saying,
that in the show notes also.
let's move this a little bit, right? Because everything has become like attacking Refkin and Compass. Because that's the way real estate works. We're like fucking high school mean girls, so everything has to get personalized. And okay, it'd be a much more useful conversation to have is looking at Anywhere's proposal,
Sure.
right? I don't have the letter in front of me, but Inman posted that. What Anywhere says is we would like they they say they're a fan of clear cooperation. What they're asking for is like the time to go from 2 days to like a few weeks.
Yeah.
That's one.
I
Right?
yeah.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Two, they want another look at the mandatory submission rule, meaning that's the currently where if you're a broker, you belong to an MLS, you must enter all your listings into that MLS in that market area. They want to look at that, right? And they want to look at, I think the third one was allowing sellers to pick and choose like what photos and what data
Yeah.
could appear in the public.
Yeah.
So it's not a internet on off, right? It's more of a hey, I only want one photo or whatever, right? Okay. I want to hear
Well, no,
if
I
Brian
think
wants
that
to move the needle, talk to
yeah.
us about that.
I think that though that goes to what I was trying to make the point on, which is like instead of stoking fear, instead of like, oh, you're doing this, and what about this, and what about that, and you're taking away sellers' freedom. It's against the Constitution. I mean, all this
Sure.
nonsense and hand waving. Why is he taking that approach when he's not taking the approach of like Anywhere is putting out, you know, some valid kind of here are some solutions, here are some ideas.
Well,
That to me
that's
is
what
a
I'm
more
asking. Is
tempered.
it valid?
That's a more tempered approach than
But that's what I'm getting
stoking
at.
this
Is it
fear.
valid?
Say
Is
it
it
again.
valid? Is it valid?
Is what?
So in other words, like if we want to just spend time on drama and like Refkin is
Well, but
BSing and
Refkins is making the drama.
yeah, but if
Anywhere isn't making the drama. Refkin is.
no, I'm saying we're just reacting to the drama. Brian is just reacting to the drama, right? So in other words, imagine if Brian's op-ed in Inman was not answering Refkin, but was addressing Anywhere's proposal. To me, that would have moved the needle.
Yeah, I get that, and again, this goes back to culturally things, right? It's like there's been a lot of people saying like ignore the nonsense that comes out of her mouth or his mouth, right? Just focus on solutions, right? But the
Yep.
problem is a lot of people listen to that misinformation and
Okay.
they take it to be true. If somebody doesn't,
Yep.
if you don't also call it out and say this is not correct,
Yeah,
there are
but who
going to be a lot
cares?
of people. I think a lot.
It's not a democracy. Like they're not running an election. Who cares what some random agent thinks? They have no say. They have no
It's not a
voice in
random
any of
agent. This
this.
is the CEO of one of the largest
No, no.
brokers in
What
the
I'm saying,
fucking
but
country.
I know. My point is, when the CEO goes and does all this misinformation, right, riles people up. Some random agent is like, "Rawr, they're selling my data." Nobody cares unless the agent sits on NAR's board or that agent sits
Well,
on
that's pretty
MLS
fucking
board,
true, man. And we know
right?
we know how that can work out. I mean, sometimes they do. I mean,
Sometimes they do, but like what I'm getting is like then it's the policy, right? The decision makers are going to look at the policy. So decision makers like Dwiggins, right? I'm not saying he's. I don't know. I don't actually know if he is a decision maker, but the folks you're about to go do a strat plan in front of, right? Like those people actually need to consider the policy aspect of this. And there's been a lot of policy arguments that were made. Clear cooperation is good for consumers. It's this, it's limits, whatever. Like there's policy, right? So I'm just getting at like when I talk about like did Brian move the needle? Like okay, Brian, you answered Refkin's charges, right? That's great, and I'm not saying that's bad. Like you gotta, I guess you kind of have to do that. But what would have moved the needle is okay. Can we take the eye off of the Refkin thing and move on to someone that we agree is there's no drama, it's done
maybe he's yeah,
professionally, but
maybe
the
that's the thing.
policy
Maybe they are going to
proposals
do that, right? But I mean,
maybe.
that had to be
But
addressed first, I think.
dude, the fucking board meeting is coming up in what, like 2 weeks? 3
Soon,
weeks?
soon.
November, early, right? Okay, so if we all agree Anywhere's proposal is not drama, it's not accusing anybody of anything. It's just straight like, here's what we want. Address that. In fact, let's you and I do that. Here's the new angle, because we didn't talk about any of this pre-show. What's your take on Anywhere's proposal?
I haven't read all, I've read it once quickly, so I'm not.
We'll just say three things.
Yeah.
Okay. They want the time, the mandatory time, the time when you don't have to, sort of put in the MLS in public marketing, etc. Right? To be 30 days, let's say. They said a few weeks. We'll call it 30 days. So instead of 48 hours, it's 30 days. That's one. Two, they want it to be where brokers do not have to enter all their listings into the MLS. Okay. Three, they want a change to the definition of public marketing, so it doesn't violate whatever it is, right?
So when they public market it, it doesn't really mean public market. Yeah.
They want to define public marketing
Okay.
broader, right? I don't know what that means,
Yeah.
but that's three. And then the fourth one is sellers now have a choice of picking and choosing what gets to go on the internet. What do you think?
I think the first one is absolutely, there's some, room for like, let's try something again. As I always say in this podcast, to me, it's this, I'm always thinking from a software perspective. Okay, let's start with 30. Well, we started with 1, we have 30. Let's see what happens, right?
Yep.
As far as not putting all the listings on the MLS, I mean, I think that MLSs already have that provision. If a seller wants to sign a waiver or something that says, for privacy concerns, for ADA concerns, for whatever else, I do not want my listing on the MLS, they can do that now. So I don't know what they're talking about there, right? If there's some MLSs that are holding back on that, well, then that's an MLS to MLS
Well, if
decision.
it's not in the MLS, but it's on, say, coldwellbanker.com,
right,
that's clear cooperation.
Right.
What Anywhere is saying.
No, well, that's a different thing than I think you're going to another bullet point there when they can like define what public means, right?
No. When they say allow us to not put it into the MLS, right? Because again, the rule, every MLS has a rule, unless, to your point, the client signs a waiver. I don't want it in the MLS at all, right? But if you say I don't want it in the MLS at all, and then it appears on coldwellbanker.com, the MLS is going to go after them. That violates clear cooperation.
Yeah. Right? Well, I mean,
violates that rule.
I can't understand the situation where a seller would sign a waiver and only put it on, so that's a red herring to me.
So you're saying no, you must submit all your information to the MLS.
No,
okay,
again.
Fourth one.
No, again, to the MLS,
other than
right?
The waiver, right? Other than the no internet, no nothing waiver.
Right. I mean, if it's no internet, then it's not on the fucking, it's not on coldbanker.com. So if the
consumer says, I don't want it in the MLS, I don't want every Tom, Dick, and Harry seeing it, I only want it on your website.
Well, that's not, you just said, I don't want it on the web, and then you just said, I want it on your website.
Right, I want it on your website. Right. No, I understand. I want it on your website. And I want your agents to know about it because you're a big ass.
I mean, if it was their internal website, that's a whole different thing. But you're talking about coldbanker.com. That's going to the public, which is.
Do you remember? Let's go back to ARG from back in the day. You're the listing agent. You know my house best. I don't want any buyer agents who is not you or from your team trying to rep my house. So I want all the buyers to go to you. If they said that, are we going to allow it?
I don't think so.
Right? So
there's room, but there's questions to have. Absolutely.
Right. Okay, how about the fourth one?
Are we on 4? I thought, what was the first? The first one was...
So first one is 30 days.
The timing, right?
Right. Second one was define public marketing.
No, we didn't do that one
yet. They weren't real clear what they meant by that. Like, I don't know. Maybe they were. I didn't read the letter.
The public internet is a good definition of public marketing.
So maybe they say, listen, as long as it's not public internet, we can do. In other words, we could do email marketing. We could do social media. We could join networks.
Well, social media is on the internet, but so that would be out.
We could share it with other brokerages.
Maybe some internal email marketing or whatever. But if it's on the internet, like a social media site,
another broker, like. I'm Anywhere. I let Keller Williams
I think there's room there to talk about, right?
So whatever it is. So the second was to redefine public marketing. Third one was no more of the mandatory submission rule. Right? Give us more flexibility. And the fourth one was sellers, meaning listing brokers, can sort of pick and choose what goes into the public internet.
Yeah, I don't think that the pick and choose doesn't make any sense to me.
Okay, so what are you in favor of? What are you against, and why? What's the rationale?
Okay, so let's go back to beginning.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I'm
30
not in
days.
favor.
Let's start with what? 30 days.
Yeah, I think there's flexibility there. We sat at one. They're proposing another time. Let's see what happens that other time.
Okay.
But as long as it's going into the MLS and it will eventually go in the MLS, we can futz around with time. So I'm not saying a yes or no there. I'm like, I think there's room to negotiate. What's the second
I'm going
one?
to push back on that a little bit.
Okay.
What if it's 90 days?
Well, again, I'm not the one negotiating this.
No, let's say you're voting. You're on the board of directors, right?
Yeah.
And the proposal is let's change clear cooperation. So instead of being 2 days, it'll be 90 days.
Yeah.
Are you voting yes or no?
I would probably say no.
Why not?
I think that's too long. I think a full quarter is too long. I think I'm more
too long for what?
For it to be off, for it not to be available to other listing agents.
Other listing agents? Other agents.
On the MLS, I should say.
Right, okay. But 30 days, okay.
I mean, it's closer to, I feel more comfortable. I don't know. I mean, that's just my own kind of feeling. I mean, there might be some data out there that somebody can, come up with. I think there's been a couple studies. So maybe we could look to that to kind of educate our opinion.
Has there been studies? I don't know.
Yeah, there's been studies about off MLS and MLS.
I guess what I'm getting at is what is going to drive your vote one way or the other?
Well, okay. One thing is like in any sort of discussions or negotiations, I'm going to give a little and I'm going to get a little, right? So maybe I have to give a little on this to get a little on the other side, right? These are not happening in binary type of things, right? We're all trying to come up with something so that people can, that we have a win-win if it's even possible.
But this is not a negotiation. It's not a transaction. This is here's the rule.
Well, no, every policy, hold on. Every policy NAR puts up there, they have discussion about it. They have, and you can call that discussion and negotiation or not, but it is. It's like, well, I don't like this. Well, I don't like this. What about this? Well, what about that? That's a negotiation.
I get it. What I'm saying is this. We have a rule already. Clear cooperation policy is already a rule.
Yeah.
The defense of clear cooperation was consumer. Right? This is better for consumers.
Right.
Okay. So when you say we're going to allow 30 days, is that better for consumers?
Well, to me, let's again go back to software terms. We have CCP version 1.
Sure.
Right? We've had that out for a while now.
Sure.
Okay, what has worked? What has not worked? We've had that kind of thing. So now we're going to version 2.
Right.
Right. So what things, okay, these people are happy. These people are not happy. We've had some studies done. We can look at some data now.
Right.
Let's look at those kind of things and like, how can we improve or, what can we do to help answer or help our clientele,
right.
To create a new version 2 of this policy that maybe is going to work better, right? Okay. For everybody involved. At the core of that, I think we want to keep the consumer as our North Star a little bit, but at the same time, we have constituents that also have needs, and we have to put that into our brain as far as when we're talking about creating version 2.
I'm not sure I understand how this applies, though. What I'm saying is the justification for the rule. So maybe, I don't know, if we're going to torture analogies, right? Your software version 1 does CMAs. So presumably version 2 also has to do CMAs, right? Like there's the core purpose of the thing. Like why does this piece of software exist? It exists to generate CMAs. Okay, well then version 2 must also generate CMAs, right? You could tweak it, you could change it.
No, there's different ways of
like version 2 just repairs cars.
No. I think what I'm looking at is like, how do you enforce that, or how do you kind of come about that? If we want, again, analogies, whatever, it's like, you want to make sure your daughter doesn't get pregnant, you can put a chastity belt on her, right? And you know what? Okay. You realize that, that's kind of hard to kind of whatever. And your version 2 is that you keep her in the house. And there's different ways of looking at solving a problem.
I'm so that's what I'm trying to get you to, right? I'm saying clear cooperation policy already exists.
Right.
Everyone who defends it, the justification for its existence is that it's good for consumers. Right?
Yeah.
Like literally, like the binary that's been set up is it's greed, right? Like all, Compass and Reffkin's
Yeah, but
greedy, and it's about
we
shit.
said, and what's
Hold on.
good for consumers is only it's 2 days it gets on the MLS. Well, okay, that's something I think
That's
that
yeah.
we can't say that, well, is it 2 days?
That's what I'm trying to
We've been
explore.
doing
So if
this,
if
hold
right,
on, we've been
what
doing this for so long. It's at
we're
2
there.
days.
Okay.
Now, is there some flexibility, and as we've looked at this, that maybe it could be 10 days, maybe it could be 30 days, maybe it could be 90 days, right? That's what I'm talking about. You still have that
Right.
thing in your head, but why do we have to be
Right.
so dogmatic about the number of hours that it is on there?
Yeah. No, that's not what I'm saying. That is like, and yeah, I think you exactly got to where I wanted to get to. If the justification is good for consumers, then every decision you make, every whatever flex, every whatever has to be driven by, is this good for consumers, right?
Well, I
If
think
today, hold on. So if today you're saying 2 days is good for consumers, right?
we had to start
Then
somewhere, Rob.
I'm not criticizing. Yeah,
Okay.
fine. No, I get it. All I'm saying is if you say 2 days good for consumers, right? Then to your point, because when I said what if it's 90, you're like, no, I don't buy it. Because your gut, your instinct is that's not good for consumers, right?
Eh,
If it's not in the MLS for 90 days, right? Then it might as well not be in the MLS,
Well, that's my
right?
opinion. Somebody can give me more data or another reason why. Or again, I have in my head, I want 5 things, right? And
Okay.
just like anything else, I might, even though this might be the greatest for consumers, overall what I'm going to get is better than it just being blown up, right? So I mean, to me,
Okay.
this is all about, it is a conversation, and it's a conversation we had. I mean, as Brian said in his thing, it's like, you worrying about your margins as a broker, that's fucking 1,000% valid. I totally get that. I mean, you have a business, you
Yeah.
have people that are working for
Yeah.
you, you have
Yeah.
shareholders, all that. I mean, I totally get you. And I can understand your fear, your knee-jerk reaction, like, of that, if I change this, this will happen. Sure. I get you. So let's
Yeah.
come back
Yeah.
and let's talk about this, because there's other things
Yeah.
long term that
Yeah.
I'm not sure you're really thinking about that could happen. So
Okay.
let's talk about these 4 points, and maybe we can come up with version 2. And if version 2 doesn't work out, we'll tweak it at version, sometimes software companies roll back. Well,
Yep.
fuck, everybody
Yep.
loved that feature, right? So we're going to have
Yep.
to put
Yep.
that back in, because
Yep.
it's,
Yep.
so I mean, it's not a, it is a conversation, but starting from fear. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what that means necessarily.
Okay.
Like starting
All
from
right.
fear as opposed to what? Starting from what?
Well, again, like we just talked about, I mean, if you're going to go up there and just spread misinformation rather than, like, as Anywhere has done,
Okay, well
propose
then,
some solutions, then I think
like
it's a good
it's
thing.
hey man, it's fucking asinine to just accuse Refkin of doing that. NAR and DML, like CCP was
No, I
created
said
out
it's
of
on all
fear.
sides. I mean,
Right.
it seems like,
So if we're gonna do it that way, if we're gonna drop all the BS, then Brian should be out there saying, "Hey, you know what? We created CCP because we're worried about our value as the MLS going away when all these private networks came up, and NAR is worried about losing subscribers. That's why we put this in." And then fuck this like consumer
well,
fair
they are
housing bullshit.
saying
That was
that. I mean,
never
I
the
think these
motivation for putting this
MLSs
in.
are saying exactly that, they think that having, as again, an open marketplace is better than a closed one. Than, listings being
No,
behind a velvet rope
but
or
that's what I'm
things like
saying.
that.
That's not what they believe. That's not how they act. That's not the motivation. The motivation was a place for fear back in 2012 when they came up with all this. Is my point. If we're gonna be like no bullshit, like okay, you know, Compass or whoever anywhere is acting from a place of fear, so is the MLS and NAR, and they're all pretending like they give a shit
Sure,
about consumers. They
that's
don't.
fair. That's fair.
Right? That's what I'm saying. Fine.
That's
And
fair.
then let's just have it naked.
That's
Here's
fair.
what that goes down to, though. Naked, right? What it goes down to is why does the MLS care? Why does the MLS want clear cooperation policy? And the answer, if you think about it, is because the MLS is a subscription business, right? Like that's how they make their money. They make their money by head count of agents who subscribe for their service. Okay? What keeps agent count so high? What keeps subscriber numbers up? Really lax license law, really lax realtor laws, and critically, a shit ton of brokerages. So this was my last thing that I wrote in response to Dwiggins, right? And I didn't mean it in specific in terms of CCP, but if we're gonna get real about it, man, if we're really gonna say no bullshit, let's just talk about it. Okay, the MLS exists to allow small brokers to compete against big ones. Period. And James is the one who pointed that out. If we got rid of CCP and the big brokers started hoarding their listings, right, it makes it impossible for a small mom and pop broker to compete against them. Impossible.
Yeah, it
And he
does.
knows because all
It
of his
destroys
franchisees are small
competition. Yeah, it
companies.
destroys
What?
competition.
It destroys competition.
Yeah.
Bottom line. So the MLS is there to enable small brokers to compete against big ones. Period. End story.
Yeah, to enable competition, however you want to phrase it. Sure.
However you want to call it. Then maybe the conversation should shift away from we give a shit about consumers and fair housing to should we have competition, yes or no?
Yeah,
Right?
I think that's a
Isn't
pretty
that the
clear.
better?
I
Isn't that
think
more
that's a
naked? Isn't that more honest? Right?
sure, sure. But I think that those things can also be other goals can be in parallel with.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. But if you put it that way, then I think we could end up having interesting conversations. Right? Like, is there a right? Is there some sort of right that if you get a broker's license, you just have a right to compete against anywhere using
I don't know.
anywhere's
If you
data
open a
to do it?
restaurant, do you have a right to compete against
But
Olive
hold
Garden?
on, the key thing is using their data to do it.
Well, that's the construct of what they've decided to do, right? So,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
No, you could
And
open a
I think
brokerage and not join an MLS. I mean,
right.
I
And
think
I
that we've
think
seen
that
that
then
model
becomes right.
happen.
I think that becomes the interesting conversation. Right. And once compensation is off the MLS, that's going to be the conversation. My personal take is CCP is dead and the MLS is dead because compensation is no more. And once compensation is no more, you just look at self-interest of the parties involved. Like that's why I wanted to almost talk about Anywhere's proposal, right? Because everyone wants to get dramatic and get personal and blah blah blah. Okay, look at Anywhere's proposal. If CCP is changed to meet what they're proposing, 30 days, some sort of marketing allowed, whatever that is, as long as it's not Zillow, right? Uh, no more of the mandatory submissions, and the sellers, meaning the listing agent, can pick and choose what goes out to the public. Hey man, it's going to be impossible for small brokers to compete against that, right? So imagine, like, I'm talking to a buyer. Hey, work with me. I'm whatever. I'm awesome. I have 25 years experience, right? It's like, okay, well, I don't have access. I can't tell you what Anywhere has for sale for 30 days. I can't tell you what Keller Williams has for sale for 30 days. I have 3 listings. Come work with me. You're never get. I mean, I'm sorry, you can't compete.
I think there's a lot of room for niche brokerages to compete in that. I mean, because
But
if
that's
there's
just
no longer a
niche.
single source of, and this is why it's bad for consumers. If there's no longer
Yes.
a single source of all the listings, you're going to force. If I'm out there looking for a home, right? Whether you're a
Yeah.
big broker or what
Yeah.
or a small broker, I guess I'm going to have to go talk to all you guys because I want to make sure I understand what's available on the market, right? And if there's a small brokerage that has, you know, a lot of listings in the area that I'm looking at, I'm absolutely
Of
talking to that
course.
guy. Yeah.
Sure. A lot of listings in that area. But the niche you're talking about, I mean, I don't see how what
Well, I
niche are they
guess
saying?
luxury is. I mean, there's a lot of luxury kind of brokerages that can survive on 10 listings a year, right?
Okay. So I suppose if you're dealing with super high and ultra, like, we only deal with 50 million and up properties. Sure, that's a niche. That's a niche today, right? And those agents, they discriminate like fuck over, I remember hearing this story a lot. Beverly Hills, the whatever, the super high end parts of LA. Some random KW agent calls the listing agent, I have a buyer. They don't even return that call. We could talk cooperation to a blue in the face. They don't return that call because like I've never heard of you. And anybody who's able to bring a buyer that could buy this property, a $70 million mansion in Beverly Hills, I know all of them.
Which is ridiculous, right? So
But
yeah,
but it's like a small club, and they're like, "You're nobody. I never heard of you. I'm not returning a call. It's a joke, right?" And this happens
that's just
today.
bad business. I mean, but yeah, okay.
Fine, but
So there's only
it's
a
like
select amount of people that know who the millionaires are. That's ridiculous.
I'm not saying it's right or I'm just saying that's reality, right? Same thing happens in like Aspen and Vale. Like all those agents, they all know each other, and they're like, if you're not one of us, then fuck off, because we know you don't know anybody who's like whatever. Again, it could be right, it could be wrong. It's just the reality of it, right? So, given that, I don't know what niche other than that. Like, I'm
No,
sorry.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that it would be difficult, right? It would be. It is. James is right. It is going to favor more larger brokers, right?
Of
For sure.
course,
Yeah.
right. And so, if that's the case, then the issue becomes: is the MLS? Should we, as an industry, just all agree we want thousands and thousands of two-person brokers, right? And we should do everything we can to enable that.
Well, there's other
I think
ways
that's
of,
a worthy
there's other
debate.
ways of making that happen without sacrificing the experience to the consumer, right? I mean,
Look, I mean, if you put it this, let me put it this way: if there's only one brokerage, there's no sacrifice to consumers, right?
well, they no, they, if it's only one broker, they can the pricing controls they would have would be tremendous.
Sure, sure. If there are three brokers, is it really that big a sacrifice?
I think so. I think fucking these people
Why?
are. I mean, it's all going to be driven by greed at that point. You only got three people in the whole fucking planet. I mean,
What? Not
selling
three
real estate.
people.
That's a bad.
Three
I think that's a
giant.
bad.
It's anywhere
I don't know. You're not going to
EXP and
convince me like not having more competition is not a good thing. It's a good thing to have more competition.
cool. And I of course I want more competition as well, right? So what I'm getting at is this: I'm saying all this stuff like about consumers, if like to me that's the stuff that feels like BS more and more.
Well, there is BS. There's enough bullshit around to go for everybody. Absolutely.
Sure.
That's
But
valid and a fair point.
but
Yes.
this one I think is actually not BS, and this is what we actually should be talking about, which is, hey, should we have all this like should we make real estate or keep it as competitive as it is today?
Yes.
And the competition there is all recruiting and retention, right? And and I know, and you've talked to brokers, like, I mean, my wife used to be a managing broker. It's like that's 99, like 90% of what a managing broker does is recruit and retain. Right. And I used to talk about this back in the day when I'd looked at brokerage models, whatever. I'm like, so let me get this straight. Your managing broker's compensation is $36,000 a year, but they get a bonus for recruiting, and they get a bonus for mortgage leads generated, and they get a bonus for retention. What are you incentivizing? Oh, you incentivize recruiting, mortgage leads, and right?
Yeah.
Like they're not incentivized by, well, what was the quality of service? What's the NPS score of your agents? They don't. No, no, no. That you don't get incentivized for that. You get incentivized for recruiting, mortgage leads, or title leads, whatever. And this. That's the competition then. Okay. Like, are we saying that big brokers should not have an advantage over small brokers? And if so, let's actually agree on that. Let's make that really clear, right?
I don't think anybody's saying that. I mean, it's just there's different ways of solving the problem you're talking about.
Then fine.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is then at least we could get real about shit. At least like we could just, the MLS committee, instead of talking about all this like whatever highfalutin bullshit. It's like, okay, look, because of this, we think all the data should be in here so to enable as much competition with small brokers as possible so that agents have the maximum amount of choice in terms of splits, in terms of products and services, blah, blah. Competition is good for everybody. Make that argument, right? And
Yeah. I
then
mean,
anywhere, all these guys, if that's what they agreed to, here's the thing: 30-day exclusion, fuck that noise, right? That's got to go out the window because that does not help competition, right? In fact, there should be mandatory submission and like no office exclusives. And if the 1 in a million consumer says, I really need privacy, the MLS already has rules can handle that, right? So everybody in. Why? It's so that other brokers, there's more competition, right? Hey,
I think
Compass, somebody could spin out of your system and set up a competing broker to you in New York City tomorrow, and it'd be able to have access to everything you've got in terms of listing data, inventory, all of it, so they could be a much more effective competitor to you. Then let's make that decision. Because I've been making that decision. I've been making that argument specifically and clearly for MLSs. Let's have more competition between MLSs. Do I expect them to go along with that? Not really. But to the extent that they do, I'm not like That's the real deal. Not about whatever consumer this like no, no, no. We need more competition between MLSs. Then let's have that be the point. Hey, we need more competition between brokerages. Cool. Everyone should agree on that then. If you don't,
Yeah,
if
I
you
think
don't,
yeah, to put it kind of me and to wrap things up here on a higher level, it is since August 17th, right?
yes.
And the changes that made. Um the MLS community industry, I think, has to do a better job at. And it's only been 3 months, right? So I'm not
Right.
knocking anybody for
Right, right,
or
right.
2 months really, right?
Right.
Um for maybe not having this concisely enough is, do they have a right to exist now? And they somebody should clearly, and I see pieces of it everywhere. I mean, nobody in the past 2 weeks, I don't think there's anybody that scoured the internet more than I talking about this, getting ready for my meetings. But can we succinctly communicate? Because not everything deserves to exist.
Right.
Does the MLS have a right to exist? I think yes. Right. But I think that needs to be more clearly communicated post compensation going
Yes.
away.
Yes. Yes. And I think what we're going through is the painful pangs of like a rebirth. Right. Notice every conversation we're having, CCP, PDAP, whatever, every conversation, NAR, this, that, and the other, every conversation to me feels like we need a whole new bargain because the old bargain is now dead.
Yeah.
Compensation, guarantee of payment is dead. We need a new bargain, and the MLS have to figure it out.
I think, as being in this business as long as I have, I agree with you a little bit. I agree with you there, but it's also another thing. If the market was going strong, nobody would give a fuck. Right? We would just be going because every time there's market, whatever. Now everybody's whining and complaining and looking and pointing fingers. But man, if we had a healthy real estate market where shit's just happening instead of this low supply, I really do think these issues, they're going to find a way to fucking make it work so all of us can
Mm,
make money. But right
I'm
now,
not.
not all of them
Yeah,
are making money. And
maybe,
I see this a lot of, I've seen this happen before. When the market's down, it's
maybe.
like, well, what about this? What about that? And then all of a sudden, when they start getting busy and they start making some money, it's like, yeah, we don't have time for that. We don't have time for that. I got 5 sellers on the phone and 5 buyers, and this and that and that
Yeah,
and
but that's
this.
agents.
Well, but agents drive. That money goes to the coffers of brokers, right? And then if
No,
it's
no, no. I get you. What I'm saying is, what I remember more is that back when the hottest real estate market we had ever seen, right? So roughly from 2013 to about 2020, no, 2022, right? Literally, it's the hottest market we had ever seen. Brokers are still bitching about a lot of these
but
things.
not
Why?
like
Because
not at the level we're at now, bro.
no, I disagree, man. They were bitching about. Do you remember the you have 10 days thing at
Yeah, but
CMLS?
yeah, but that wasn't, I mean, anything like what's going on right now. I mean, it's the reason people can still quote that is because it was
I
somewhat like,
okay.
who cares? It was a
Okay,
fart in the
I
wind.
disagree. My point simply is 2011, 2012, like the market was hot. People were making money. But the issue is the agents were making money. Brokers were not.
Right.
Brokers haven't been making money for what, 30 years? That's the issue. So everyone wants to talk like it's agent, and
Well, that
consumers and
that's a
needs
more
of little.
that's another conversation of when the when everything turned from broker to agent
Yeah,
compensation,
like the 70s.
Remax
But
and
yeah.
red carpet and
So
all
what
that
I'm
shit.
just saying, when the market's hot, brokers bitch because they're paying too much out to agents and their profit margins suck. When the market sucks, they're bitching because their profit margins suck and the agents aren't making any money. Like
Why
I'm
would
like,
you want to become a broker then? That's what I don't understand.
I've been wondering that myself the
The
entire time.
brokers
Like
have to ask themselves, do they have a right to
yes, look,
exist?
Steve Murray at Realtrend's been talking about this for like 20 years. The average brokerage profit margin is 3%. And I'm like, treasury bills pay 4. Why? Why? Right? Why? And look, I think that's anyway. We got to wrap up. I think that becomes the dominant conversation for the next stage and next phase. That wasn't because the guarantee of payment, the compensation guarantee, created this infrastructure, the bargain of the
Well,
industry
it
that
is. It's a double
that's
whammy.
gone.
You've got the compensation shit going away along with the supply in the market.
Sure.
I mean,
Sure.
it is tough out there
Sure.
for
But
everybody.
no, you're right. But the housing market will change. I mean, that's macroeconomics, right? What's not what's completely unprecedented is we have to reinvent sort of the fundamental bargain, the fundamental infrastructure of the entire real estate industry.
Yeah.
And we'll go through it. I'm not like it's not gonna happen tomorrow. It's not gonna happen next week. It's gonna take some time. It's gonna be painful, but I think that's why you have to understand this. All this fighting CCP, the drama, blah blah blah. It's just part of the birth pangs of something new. It has to get born,
Yeah.
right? And I
Version
think
2.
version two. But I think if we're going to do that, let's kind of be more honest about it and say, really, the issue right now is how much competition should there be between brokerages? That's a key issue that we're trying to work through right now in this CCP conversation. So let's leave it there. We'll probably have to come back to it at some point. God, I can't wait to talk to you after your strat plan. We should do a show literally on like strat planning and the MLS and
Yeah.
Realtor Association's MLS strat planning. And you could be the nice guy, like because I have done it too much and it's all ridiculous. So that'll be a fun conversation, especially for audience.
I'm looking forward to it. I mean, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey everyone, thanks for listening to Shammer once again. Really appreciate you. Like I said, I'm a little tired of talking about CCP, so if there are topics that you guys want us to address, please let us know.
Yeah.
Right. And then we'll see what we can
I think
do
we might have a guest coming up too.
We
right?
might.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
We might. Okay.